Now before we get into the video, I do want to say a massive thank you to today's video sponsors, and once again that is jerseyfifa.com. They really do help keep the content on this channel going, and they even sent me a free shirt which you can see on screen here. And as you can see, I got the new Manchester United home kit, and genuinely the kit really is top quality. I highly recommend their products. So make sure to get in a link in the description down below, and now if you use code jerseyfifa at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order. You get a great football shirt and you help support the channel, which I really do appreciate massively. So Antonio Conte is a manager that has won trophies pretty much everywhere that he has gone, and Spurs are a team that have struggled in that area for far too long now, and I think ultimately that is the reason why Spurs brought him in as manager last year. Now since coming into the club, it feels like Conte has been building a team that suits his tactic and his system perfectly. And not meaning to disrespect the signings, but a couple of them do feel like they're targeting short-term success. At the same time, there are other signings that have come in that are going to be at the club for a much longer period of time, whilst also having an instant impact on the team. That's sort of players like Basuma and then also Jed Spence as well. And then finally, at this moment in time, the only other signing that they have made is the signing of Richarlison, who again feels like a player that can come into the squad and make an impact immediately whilst also still being young enough. All of these signings taken into consideration, added on to the fact that Spurs already have some brilliant players, means that Spurs now have a really dangerous squad. So the question now is, how will they set up and how good will they be? So regardless of the exact personnel in the starting 11, I'm pretty confident that Spurs will be setting up in a 3-4-3 formation. It worked very well for them late last season, and I don't think Conte will be moving away from it. So now to actually go through the starting 11, and in goal it doesn't really feel like there is much debate. Unless there is an unfortunate injury or something like that, Hugo Lloris will hold the number 1 spot for pretty much the entire season. At centre back, I again think it will be relatively straightforward, and moving from left to right, I am expecting to see Longley, Dyer and Romero forming a back 3, and if they can stay fit, they will be crucial. So having this back 3 will give Spurs plenty of options to play out from the back, but I think we will see a slightly different shape, with the 2 widest centre backs in the box, whilst Dyer sits on the edge creating a diamond shape. If this shape doesn't work and the centre backs aren't able to get out of the press, then they will still be occupying opposition forwards, meaning that the wing backs, perhaps Perisic and Spence, will be the spare option to play the ball out wide. And then also on top of that, Spurs will also have the option of going long as well. Conte often asked Inter to play more direct to Lukaku when they couldn't get through the press, and Harry Kane is also more than capable of doing the same. Whilst that is an option, Spurs will ultimately want to try and dominate possession as much as possible, and to do this they'll use a 3-2 shape, allowing the centre backs and the 2 midfielders in the centre to try and take control of the game. In this system, the centre backs will be key because they will be given the licence to carry the ball forward, and this is exactly why Longley has been brought in on loan. Both Longley and Romero are excellent at carrying the ball forward, stepping forward. From here, one little trend that I am then expecting to see is one of the wingers dropping a little bit deeper into a pocket of space, which would then allow the centre backs to play the ball forward into their feet, then getting the winger on the half turn. With the wingers occasionally dropping into these deeper central areas, it will create acres of space out wide, and this is of course where the wing backs will then come in, and we're going to see a lot of attacking intent from Spence and Perisic. If this is the case and the wing backs are able to push forward into these advanced areas, then something we're going to see is crosses into the box, particularly from the left hand side, where Perisic really does have a brilliant delivery. Another option for Spurs is to occasionally change the approach of the centre backs, and rather than playing the ball short through the lines, the wide centre backs need to be given the licence to play slightly longer at times in a more direct fashion. If this happens, then again the wing backs will be the target. The wing backs will now have a much higher starting position, so rather than attacking the space, they now become the out ball out wide, and that is where they can then really be dangerous. Due to the nature of the wing-back system, this will allow Spurs to create numerical advantages, which obviously creates space in behind, meaning that the wingers can now instead look to make underlapping runs in behind the defence. These underlapping runs will allow the wingers to attack the byline, from where they can then look to fire low cutback passes back across the box, and what better player to act as a poacher than one of the best strikers in world football. Now this variation is something that will be key to any success from Spurs this season. They cannot become predictable, so this approach of sometimes passing to wingers' feet and then sometimes switching to the wingbacks is the way forward for them. Now if this is the case, and I genuinely think that it is going to work out this way, then Spurs are going to be an incredible attacking threat, but importantly Conte will also have this team well drilled from a defensive point of view as well. Now when defending, Spurs will take a very different approach to what most other sides take at the moment, and rather than pressing high, they will instead look to retreat towards the middle third in their set 3-4-3 formation. Now what's important is that this is not a case of Spurs parking the bus. Conte may be defensive at times, especially in big games, but for me it is much more a case of Spurs looking to play in a mid-block. It's just a different approach. In this sort of defensive system, one of Spurs' most important players will be Bissouma, and for me he may have been the most important signing of the summer, because he is incredible at sitting in a mid-block before pouncing to win the ball back. If this works and Bissouma is able to win the ball back, then he should nearly always have a quick passing option in Harry Kane, who, as we know, will always look to drop towards the ball, and that's where he now becomes the link point for the move. That's where Spurs become deadly. We saw it last season. Kane regularly dropped deep, which allowed Son and Kulusevski to attack the space in behind, and I think the same is going to happen again, and they could become pretty unstoppable. For me personally, the thing that I like about this front three is the balance. Between them they tick every box. Kulusevski came into the team in January and almost immediately provided excellent ball carrying skills and creative ability. What this done is it allowed Son to adapt his style slightly. Previously he was more of a ball carrier, but since Kulusevski has taken that role, it has now allowed Son to play as more of a runner, and it's made him even more deadly. In these quick transitions we'll also see the wingbacks getting forward as well. For example, if the counter is building down the left, then the right wingback will be the outball over on the other side, and vice versa, to provide the width for the attack. Obviously all of that put together creates an incredible counter-attacking machine. You have two brilliant attacking wingbacks who will be helping three of English football's finest attackers. The transition really could be frightening. Now obviously you can't deploy these tactics in every single game because it simply won't work, but in the big games against teams that want to dominate possession, the potential for Spurs to sit in their mid-block and pounce really does look promising. Now obviously on top of all this, we also have to consider the fact that Spurs have added Richarlison to the squad as well, so in certain games there's even potential for him to come into the attack, creating more unpredictability for the opposition. Now so far I have been talking about the positives, but I do still have some concerns. And for me, I still think that Spurs will have certain issues against teams that sit a little bit deeper, because I think the squad still lacks the ability to break teams down. Ultimately, that's the balance that Spurs are going to have to figure out moving forward. This Spurs team could be a real problem for any team in the Premier League and in Europe. We saw it last season, and I think we're going to see it even more this year. However, the question mark remains over the so-called smaller teams, the sides that don't give you the space to attack on the counter-attack. In those games, do Spurs have what it takes to unlock the tightest and most stubborn defences? Now, to be fair, that probably comes down to the midfield. Bentancur, Højbjerg and Bissouma are all good footballers in their own way, but I think saying that any of them are particularly creative would be wrong, and I guess that's the problem. With that in mind, that's why I'm surprised that Spurs didn't look to bring Eriksen back to the club. He could have been that creativity that they are looking for, so I'm surprised that didn't happen, because it would have created potential to even change to a 3-5-2 shape, which is actually Conte's preferred formation. Now to be fair, we are still only in July, so there is plenty of time for Spurs to get active in the transfer market again to look for that sort of creator, and maybe someone like James Maddison could be a sneaky transfer to keep an eye on. Regardless of whether or not we see more transfers, one thing that is sure is that Conte will have a plan. I said right at the start of the video that all of the business so far this summer very much feels like Antonio Conte business, and that's a good thing. This positive business means that I think Spurs head into this season with a lot of positivity and optimism, and I do think that the fans are in for a season where they have some real special days against some of Europe's very best teams. The question now is, will it be enough to win a trophy? Spurs last won a proper competitive trophy back in 2008, which is far too long ago. However, this squad, with this manager, may just be able to break that horrible streak to an end. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.